After Nintendo released the NES Classic, there's been this movement to create more classic consoles due to the popularity of the product, and some companies have really nailed it. Nintendo has been on top of it. NES and SNES Classic have been both great products. There's other ones that are pretty yikes and oof, hell no. And now here comes Atari with a console called Atari VCS, which is sort of a hybrid. It is a bit of a retro console, but it's also trying to be its own new console for the modern era, except that the product that they're releasing is nothing short of an Ouya level disaster and scam. So let's get right into the story. This is the Atari VCS. It was announced back in May 30th, 2018, and they promised the world with this. And they started an Indiegogo campaign, crowdfunding, that raised quite a bit of money. From over 11,000 backers, they managed to pull in $3 million, which is pretty good results. And among the features that they promised include play, discover new and classic games on Atari's new open platform powered by AMD Ryzen with Radeon graphics technology. Now, at this time, they did not clarify exactly what the tech specs are. They kept touting how it's an AMD chip, and that's about all they said. And the lack of openness with the tech specs left a lot of people concerned about this. Stream, web-based streaming videos and entertainment up to 4K resolution and 60 frames per second. Play cloud stream games, some creation features, so on and so forth. It also ships with, and this is where the classic retro aspect comes in, it features over 100 home and arcade classics just integrated into the console that you can play, which is a good amount of games, I'll give them that. Again, with the powerful AMD Ryzen processor featuring Radeon graphics technology that can handle it all, including 4K HDR video streaming. Now, no mention of 4K gaming, which was kind of strange, given the price point that they're charging for this. You would think that they're trying to compete with the likes of PS4 and Xbox One. Going to the FAQ section of the Indiegogo campaign, you'll find that they're charging between $250 and almost $400 for this console. There's two versions, one with 4 gigabytes of RAM and another with 8 gigabytes of RAM. So a lot of people were kind of excited. They liked how the console looked. They liked the promise of it. But boy, oh boy, does everything point to this being a complete shit show. So one of the earlier flags that was raised was back in June 7th, 2018. There is this studio called Llamasoft developing a game called Tempest 4000, and Atari is publishing this game. And as part of Atari VCS's marketing campaign, the company showed off this Tempest 4000 game running on this console. But then we started getting reports that the developers didn't know anything about this. This Reddit post kind of talks about that, noting how developer Ivan Zorzin stated that he wasn't contracted to make a version for the Atari VCS. He doesn't know anything about his game being on the platform, and Zorzin does not even have any inside information on the project and knows as much as we do through media reports and press releases. So that right there raised some red flags. Things then really took a turn for the worse when the following year, on October 8th, 2019, news outlet The Register reported that Atari system architect Rob Wyatt has quit the project, and the reasoning behind it is pretty shady on the part of Atari. So here's what Rob Wyatt had to say. Here's what he told The Register. As of Friday, October 4th, I have officially resigned as the architect of the Atari VCS. Atari haven't paid invoices going back over 6 months. As a small company, we have been lucky to survive this long. I was hoping to see the project through to the end and that it wouldn't come to this, but I have little choice other than to pursue other opportunities. Atari responded to this by saying it is Atari's policy not to comment on an isolated matter under dispute, only to say that the Atari VCS project has always been a team effort, and its success has never been and will never be dependent on any single individual or partner. We remain confident in the Atari VCS as the entire team works diligently to bring forth its vision according to plan, and we will continue to communicate accordingly over the coming weeks and months, including hands-on presentations to key media and partners planned for later this fall. This isn't just some employee. We're talking about the lead system architect of your console quitting because you didn't pay him for 6 months. That doesn't bode well for your employment practices, and it certainly doesn't bode well for the state of the console itself when it loses the system architect. Now, going back to shady business practices and signs that the leads of this project don't know what they're doing, here's something that the outlet The Register reported. In July 2018, the troubled biz was sued by the man who first proposed the Atari VCS as a modern version of the classic 2600 console, Fergal Mac Conalod. Conalod claimed Atari had reneged on a deal to give him a 4% cut of crowdfunding revenues over $200,000 plus 25% of the limited company set up to launch the console, Atari VCS LLC, and shares in the Atari company. Atari raised over $3 million to crowdfund development of the console, but Conalod never received the $112,000 he was owed, according to his lawsuit paperwork. The case was settled out of court in New York in May this year, with Atari later noting in its 2019 financial statement that Conalod was paid $82,000. And I should emphasize that this is not the same Atari of old. Atari, the brand, has kind of been bought and sold and moved around, and now it's come under this new leadership that is pursuing this Atari VCS endeavor, and everything about it just reeks shadiness. The Register article then proceeds by giving us a history of the Atari VCS and its troubled development. So it reads right here, the issue of finances has overshadowed the Atari VCS project ever since it was announced under the name Atari Box back in July 2017. It quickly became clear that the company wasn't announcing the availability of the console, but was only seeking to gauge interest in whether to develop it by asking people to provide their email to learn more. It repeatedly emailed the thousands of netizens who subscribed with product updates before announcing in December 2017 that it was going to allow people to pre-order the console just 3 days later. But the launch date came and went, and no one heard anything beyond an email saying the launch had been paused. Yep, they were ready to take pre-orders for a product that they were only gauging interest, for a product that didn't really even exist. Fast forward 3 months later, and in March 2018, Atari suddenly announced it would be at the annual Games Conference in San Francisco, USA, an event that the Register actually attended, and they were surprised to find only a few empty boxes and no working models. Our conversation with the outfit's chief operating officer, Michael Arst, revealed that the biz had made almost no progress on the console despite having announced it 9 months earlier. So they had, I guess, the box itself, the exterior of it designed. They designed the shell, but they haven't really started on the actual components, the thing that matters, the core, the architecture. And that's when we're finally taken to the Indiegogo campaign. Using that San Francisco Annual Games Conference, they used the press in order to start this crowdfunding campaign with the initial goal of $100,000, but they ended up raising $3 million total. Now you can see right here that the Indiegogo campaign does show the box itself, but according to the Register, despite images showing a complete console, the truth was that the project did not exist beyond an empty box. Only with millions in hand did Atari finally start work on the actual console itself. So it was after the Indiegogo campaign, after raising $3 million, that they actually started developing something. A real crowdfunder, the way it should be is that you should be halfway through development and have something to show before going crowdfunding and having people gauge their interest on whether this is a product that they want. They gave the impression that they were further along in development by showing images of the box itself and by highlighting some vague tech specs, but they actually had nothing set in stone. With this crowdfunding campaign also came a new launch date of June 2019. But apparently, according to the Register, games industry insiders immediately questioned whether that was possible given how long it takes to design and test a new console. And their doubts were indeed affirmed when 3 months before the due date, 3 months before June 2019, Atari announced the launch would be delayed again. Now FYI, the delays didn't stop there. After this article was released, a month later on November 30th, 2019, the Atari VCS would be delayed again for Indiegogo backers, and the reason provided cited was, according to Michael Artz, the Atari chief operating officer, he said, quote, "We were offered the opportunity to incorporate an all-new microprocessor built on a more powerful and more efficient architecture. The team is well aware that the delay impacted our backers, but feels strongly that we made the right decision to improve the product's performance." So they touted a hardware upgrade as the reasoning behind this delay, noting how they want to prioritize high quality and performance over shipping on time. Going back to the Register article, they highlighted how Atari used the same approach as the previous year, using E3 to attract press attention in order to get another cash infusion, another cash injection, by announcing that the Atari VCS was available to pre-order on a new Atari VCS website, as well as on Walmart and GameStop. But according to the Register, at the time, Atari did not even have a working prototype when it relaunched its VCS console in June with a new launch date of March 2020. The first prototype motherboard designed by Wyatt arrived 3 months later in September. So they decided to take pre-orders despite the project clearly being in pre-production at best. The only thing that had been finalized at this point was seemingly the exterior design, the shell, but the components were still not there. At this point, backers of this project were getting pretty pissed off and concerned, so amid a lack of updates, people started posting their grievances, but then Atari responded by deleting the posts and subsequent comments, according to the Register. So with all this in mind, the Register decided to reach out to sources to inquire about the progress of the Atari VCS, and the feedback they got was that the whole process is a shit show. A long series of bad decisions that have undermined its final design is one of the things they heard. Atari's executives have no understanding of how game consoles, nor the Linux-powered operating system at the heart of the VCS work, even at the most basic level, we are told. In order to cut costs, Atari execs refused to approve a customized Linux distro that would allow the console to run its own distinct operating system. As a result, the final machine will end up functioning like a regular generic Linux PC on which you can boot and run your own games. So it's not really a true console with proprietary elements that might give it an edge. It's just literally a Linux PC that lives in a Atari-shaped box. And from what I understand, it's a pretty lame and low-end PC configuration at that, but I'll talk about tech specs a bit later. So as if the lack of understanding for how to build consoles wasn't bad enough, according to the Register, Atari will not be able to build an ecosystem of games, as it will not have its own store or distinct operating system, and so has no control over how games and other software will actually run on it. There are no mechanisms to lock game installations to particular users, we're told. Developers thus may not want to provide their games for the platform because it seems there are no security controls, making it easy to copy, share, and pirate titles. A game console lives and dies by its games. And knowing this, why would any third-party developer join the fray and want to make a game for this console? There's simply no reason to. It's too high of a risk due to the lack of security measures, and the console itself just sounds again like a complete shit show. The Register also reports that from what they've heard, the new Atari controllers work inconsistently across games. Apparently they failed to reach agreements with games engine makers Unity and Unreal, so the Atari VCS may not have the same level of acceleration and capabilities of other machines. There's talk of how the VCS advertised that it would support Netflix, Hulu, HBO Go, etc., except that instead of customized apps for the console, the way to access those would be to boot up a Chromium-powered browser, so there's no actual dedicated apps for those services. And there is actually a video on the official Atari VCS YouTube channel titled Atari VCS Dashboard Test Number 30, where you can actually see Netflix being booted up, and on the top right you can see a pop-up message that says, "Restore pages, Chrome didn't shut down correctly," suggesting all it did was boot a web browser, and the controller acts as a means to control a mouse-like pointer in order to navigate through this menu on a web browser. The console is then described as essentially a PC in an Atari-branded box, and making matters worse is that because of their penny pinching, Atari has refused to pay any third party to develop a front-end interface for their content. Also, Atari is refusing to pay developers to port their games over to their console, so they have no reason to really work on games for it. And in terms of sales, apparently the console has pre-sold fewer than 15,000 VCS consoles, which is pretty mediocre results. And so that gives developers less incentive to make games for this console. So all of this was reported a few months ago, late last year on October 8th, 2019. Let's now fast forward to modern day. As of July 6, 2020, there are plenty of headlines out there noting that the Atari VCS 800 heads to pre-order at GameStop and Walmart. You can go to GameStop right now and you'll find a listing for this console priced at a ridiculous $379.99, $380, almost $400. For $400, you can buy a PlayStation 4 Pro. For $100 less, you can buy a Nintendo Switch. For $100 less than that, you can buy a Switch Lite. If the Atari VCS 800, this bizarre, retro, modern, hybrid console is going to charge $400, it has to be up to par with the competition when it comes to hardware capability and library of games. But suffice to say, this console falls short drastically. Right here, we have a Reddit user who compares the Atari VCS's teraflops with other graphics cards and consoles. And boy, oh boy, check this out. Atari VCS has a mere 0.46 teraflops. 0.46. That is 4 times less powerful than the base PlayStation 4 at 1.8 teraflops. We are talking about a $400 console that is less powerful than even a lot of modern smartphones. That's how bad this hardware is. $400 for the 8 gigabytes of RAM version. As much as a PS4 Pro, which is significantly more powerful than the base PS4, which is already 4 times more powerful than the Atari VCS. The hardware of the Atari VCS, with how much money they're charging for it, is utterly pathetic, and it certainly is not going to be able to compete with even current-gen consoles. And keep in mind that next-gen consoles are looming on the horizon, and those will be significantly more powerful than the current-gen consoles. PS5 will be like 10.7 teraflops or something, Xbox Series X is touted to be 12 teraflops, and the PS5 has that really fast SSD that creates new game design paradigms. And so by comparison, the Atari VCS's teraflops count is a mere fraction of that. And they're charging $400. The PS5 and Xbox Series X are predicted to be in the range of $500 to $600. Assuming that next-gen consoles will cost roughly $500, that would mean that for $100 more than the Atari VCS's price point, you will get like 20 times the power. Essentially, more than 20 times the power. And not to mention that you can rest assured you'll see high-quality games on both Series X and PS5. And let's talk about games. We know that the Atari VCS does come built in with 100 retro Atari games, but this isn't just a retro console, and 100 retro titles certainly doesn't justify a $400 price point on what is both this retro console and a modern gaming console. It's a hybrid of both, so it does need modern games to go along with it. And as far as that goes, the library of games is damn pathetic. The only game we know is coming out for the console is Missile Command Recharged, which is Atari's remaster of this classic title. It looks something like this. And yeah, this is pretty much all we can look forward to. And keep in mind that this isn't even like a first-party exclusive for the console or anything. The game is already out on Steam, Epic Games Store, and on mobile app stores. According to the Steam listing, the game launched back in May 27th, 2020. Why would anyone want to pay $400 for a 0.46 teraflops console just to play an old game, one that doesn't really push the boundaries or anything? It certainly isn't a console seller per se. And again, it's already out on PC. Why not just download it on your PC, which likely has significantly more graphical prowess than this Atari VCS crapfest? Oh, but don't worry, you can play Fortnite on the Atari VCS. This is not a joke. If you go to the official Atari VCS YouTube channel, you'll find a video that says Fortnite gameplay on the Atari VCS at DCave. For the life of me, I don't know why anyone would pay $400 to play Fortnite on a 0.46 teraflops console instead of playing it on PC and all the other platforms that Fortnite is readily available on. With how little the Atari VCS offers from a hardware architecture and a games library standpoint, and given the competition and how much better hardware they have at lower price or equal price, just what are they thinking? Like, I mean, this is unreal, the fact that this thing actually exists. What a waste of $3 million. All right, that's that, folks. That's everything you need to know about the Atari VCS. I would highly recommend that you do not purchase this product. It's looking like a major, major scam. With $400, you can do so much more than get this piece of crap. You can get better consoles. You can get so many games with $400 on PC or consoles you already own. Use that money on that. Do not waste it here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the Atari VCS and the whole saga surrounding it. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.